The cafe was already half full when Emma Parker stepped inside, shaking the cold from her coat. It was late afternoon in Chicago, the hour when daylight softened and people slowed down. She chose a small table near the window, the same one she often picked when she needed to think. The glass reflected her face faintly, tired but composed, a woman who looked like she had everything in place. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup of coffee and stared outside, watching strangers pass. With purpose, she felt she had lost. Emma had been married for 8 years. On paper, her life made sense. Steady home, a reliable husband, polite conversations at dinner. Nothing dramatic, nothing broken enough to point at. But lately, she felt like she was living quietly beside her own life, not inside it. The silence in her marriage was not loud or cruel, was gentle, constant, and heavy. She told herself it was normal. Still, the feeling followed her everywhere. She didn't notice the man at first. The chair across from her moved slightly, and she looked up, ready to protest. Instead, she saw a stranger offering a small, careful smile. "I'm sorry," he said. "Every other seat is taken. I'll leave if you'd rather be alone." His voice was calm, not rushed. Emma studied him for a second. He didn't look intrusive, just human. She nodded. "It's fine," she said. "Go ahead." He thanked her and sat down. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The cafe noise filled the space between them. Emma tried to return to her thoughts, but she was aware of him in a way that surprised her. He wasn't staring. He wasn't trying to impress. He simply existed beside her, and that felt unusual. Then he turned slightly, as if unsure whether to speak. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She hesitated. A dozen answers formed in her head. She should say no. She didn't. She shrugged lightly. "Okay." He looked at her. Really looked, not in a bold way, but with focus. "When was the last time you felt truly seen?" The question caught her off guard. It wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't casual. It was honest. Emma opened her mouth, then closed it. She searched for a simple reply and couldn't find one. Truth rose too quickly. "I don't know," she said finally. "It's been a while." He nodded. Like that answer made sense. "Yeah," he said. "I figured that was it. No follow-up, no explanation." Yet something shifted. Emma felt a quiet pull, like a door opening somewhere she hadn't visited in years. She took a sip of coffee to steady herself. "I'm Emma," she said, unsure why she felt the need to say it. "Daniel," he replied. "Nice to meet you." They talked without planning to, about small things at first, the weather, the city, how busy the cafe always was at this hour. Daniel mentioned he was in town for work, originally from Seattle, now living between cities. Emma told him she worked in marketing, that she liked routines because they made life easier to manage. The pace of the conversation was quick but natural. No long pauses, no forced laughs. Daniel listened when Emma spoke. Not politely, not distracted. He listened like her words mattered. She noticed it immediately. "Are you married?" he asked, gently, as if aware of the weight of the question. "Yes," she said. She glanced at her ring without thinking. "You." He shook his head. "No, not anymore." She didn't ask for details. He didn't offer them. The moment passed, but it left a trace. Emma found herself saying things she usually kept to herself. How life could look complete and still feel empty. How people drift without meaning to. Daniel didn't try to fix anything. He didn't judge. He just understood. That was what made it dangerous, though she didn't name it yet. Time moved faster than she realized. The daylight outside faded. Into evening, Emma checked her phone and felt a sudden jolt. "I should go," she said. "I didn't realize how late it was." Daniel stood as well. "Same here." They walked toward the door together. For a moment, neither spoke. The cold air waited on the other side of the glass. "I'm glad I sat down," he said. Emma smiled. "A real one. Me too." He opened the door for her. As she stepped outside, she expected that to be the end of it. A strange, meaningful moment she would think about and then forget. Daniel paused behind her. "I usually come here around this time," he said, almost casually, "if you ever feel like talking again." She looked at him, the city lights reflected in his eyes. She felt the weight of choice, light but present. "Maybe," she said. It was a small word, but as Emma walked away, she knew it wasn't small at all. Emma didn't expect to think about Daniel the next day, yet his question, "When was the last time you felt truly seen?" lingered in her mind like a soft echo she couldn't ignore. She moved through her morning routine almost mechanically, brushing her hair, making coffee, saying good morning to her husband. Everything looked normal, but she felt a quiet restlessness in her chest. It wasn't anger, sadness, or guilt. It was more like noticing a part of herself she had forgotten. By late afternoon, she found herself walking past the cafe without thinking. Her steps slowed when she saw Daniel sitting in their usual corner reading a book. His head lifted when their eyes met, and he offered a small smile. Emma hesitated, then entered. The cafe felt warmer inside than the cold streets outside. She slid into the chair opposite him, trying to pretend this was casual, as if their meeting were accidental. Daniel tilted his head, noticing the tension she tried to hide. "Back again," he said softly, his voice calm but attentive. "You must like this table more than you let on." Emma laughed quietly. "I like a corner where I can think." She realized she was talking faster than usual. Maybe because she had been holding herself back for years and now someone was actually listening. Daniel didn't interrupt. He just nodded and waited, giving her the space to speak without pressure. They began slowly discussing small things, whether work routines and favorite books. But the conversation soon deepened naturally. Daniel shared stories of moving cities for jobs, learning to live alone, and the small victories and regrets that came with building a life apart from anyone else. Emma found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years, talking about her life with Mark, her stable yet distant marriage, and the quiet feeling of being unseen despite living in a home full of love. She spoke without thinking, letting words pour out as Daniel listened with patient understanding. "It sounds like you've been carrying this alone," Daniel said gently, looking at her with eyes that held no judgment, only recognition. Emma nodded. "I guess I have. And it's not dramatic. Nothing's broken, but it feels like I've been missing something for so long that I don't even know what it is anymore." Her voice trembled slightly. She didn't want pity. She wanted acknowledgement. And here it was, in the quiet steadiness of a stranger's gaze. Daniel leaned back, considering his words. Wanting to be understood isn't selfish, it's human. Everyone deserves that. The simplicity of the statement made her stomach tighten. No one had ever said it like that to her. Mark loved her, cared for her, but he didn't see the spaces between her smiles, the moments she quietly longed for connection. Daniel's words weren't flattery, they weren't judgments. They were a mirror. Time slipped by unnoticed. The cafe dimmed as the afternoon light softened into evening. Emma checked her watch, startled by how quickly the hours had passed. "I should go," she said, feeling a sudden pang of reluctance. She wanted to stay, to keep talking, but she had a life waiting outside these walls. Daniel stood too. "I'm glad I sat down," he said. There was a subtle weight in his tone, the kind that hinted at more than mere politeness. "So am I," she replied, surprised by how real the feeling was. At the door, he paused, and for a moment neither spoke. The city hummed outside, indifferent to the shift happening in the small corner cafe. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked, half smiling. The question was casual, almost a joke, but it carried a quiet hope. Emma felt a thrill, a rush she hadn't anticipated. She should have said no. She knew it. But the word that came out was soft, uncertain, and full of possibility, maybe. That word hung between them like a bridge, unformed yet real. As she walked away, the cold air brushed her cheeks. "Okay?" And she realized she was already thinking about tomorrow, about the next conversation, about the small moments of being truly seen that she had missed for so long. The next day arrived quickly, and Emma found herself deliberately arriving at the cafe before Daniel. She sat in their corner, her heart racing a little faster than it should, feeling a mix of anticipation and guilt. She wasn't sure if it was excitement or fear, maybe. Both. When Daniel arrived, he carried the same calm energy, a presence that seemed to anchor her even as her emotions spun quietly. They started with ordinary topics, but soon the conversation deepened again. They spoke about childhood dreams, disappointments, and the small choices that shape a person. Emma talked about Mark, not to compare or blame, but to explain how life had turned routine, how love could feel comfortable yet invisible. Daniel shared moments of loneliness he had experienced despite having friends, family, and career success. Each story intertwined, each confession building a fragile bond of understanding. There were pauses, but not awkward ones. There was laughter, quiet smiles, and moments where words weren't necessary. Emma realized she had been missing connection for so long that even a few hours of genuine conversation felt transformative. The more she talked, the more she noticed. The spaces in her life she hadn't filled herself. The more she listened, the more she felt recognized and validated in ways she hadn't realized she craved. Days passed in this pattern. Each meeting with Daniel was brief, intense, and charged with unspoken emotion. Emma never considered crossing a line. There were no promises, no touching, no overt flirtation, just a raw, emotional intimacy that was both comforting and dangerous. She started looking forward to the cafe, not for coffee, but for the sense of being understood, of being fully present with someone who saw her without judgment. One evening, after a walk along the river that cut through the city, Daniel stopped and looked at her. "I don't want to cross a line," he said carefully, almost whispering. Emma's heart raced. "I know," she replied. "But I think," he continued, "that line is already close." She nodded, feeling the truth in that statement. It wasn't about him or hurt. It was about her own awakening. The realization that she had been quietly craving connection, recognition, and attention. Being near Daniel made her see clearly how distant she had become from her own life and her marriage. That night, lying in bed beside Mark, Emma felt an unusual heaviness. It wasn't guilt over Daniel. It was awareness of what had been missing all along. She replayed their conversations, his calm eyes, the way he listened. For the first time in years, she felt a longing she hadn't recognized before, to be seen fully and completely. The days that followed were a delicate balancing act. She returned to the cafe, met Daniel, spoke, laughed, and shared stories. She went home to Mark, smiled, ate dinner, and maintained appearances. But inside, something had shifted irreversibly. She realized she could no longer ignore her own emotions, the quiet ache of being unnoticed, or the desire for meaningful connection. The bond with Daniel wasn't physical, but it was undeniable. It was emotional, deep, and stirring. Emma knew that what she felt was complicated, that it didn't make her a bad person, but it did force her to confront truths she had buried. Daniel was a mirror reflecting her loneliness and her need for recognition, a reminder that life could be more than routine, that love could exist in forms she had forgotten. Eventually, the realization settled like a slow dawn. Emma knew she had to face her reality, to recognize her feelings without letting them dictate choices she wasn't ready to make. The moments with Daniel illuminated her own desires, her unmet needs, and her longing for emotional intimacy. Each conversation left her both lighter and heavier for the connection, heavier for the truths it revealed. And as she walked home from the cafe one evening, the city lights glowing softly around her, Emma understood something crucial. Life had offered her a chance to see herself clearly, and now nothing would feel the same. The line between routine and yearning, comfort and desire, safety and awakening had been drawn. And for Emma, the hardest part wasn't Daniel Lit, was what she was beginning to realize about herself.